Hey, welcome back to the Motorcyclist Podcast. This is where we talk about motorcycling and everything that makes it great. As always, the topics on this show are constantly changing, but what doesn't change is two-wheeled fun. In this episode, we're going to talk about learning to ride, getting into motorcycling. This is going to be a great podcast for anyone that wants to learn how to ride, has ever thought about riding, or has a friend or family member that wants to ride. So, before we get started, as always, please, we love the engagement. We love to read your comments. So tell us how you got into riding. How did you get better? And have you ever stopped learning riding? So we're going to go over the first steps of riding. Like if you've never even touched a motorcycle before, how can you get into it? We're going to talk about riding schools. We're going to talk about some of our helpful tips that we've learned over the years. So we'll each give you some ideas that we've learned in our probably centuries combined riding experience at this point between the three of us. We probably are easily over a century. And then we're going to talk about advanced training. So before we get started, we've always got to do introductions. We've got editor Adam Wahid. We've got our photographer Jeff Allen, which we're going to call Jeff Burgundy today because of his sweatshirt. And you got myself, executive editor Justin Dawes. So as always, we talk about what we've been riding. So, Adam, what have you been riding this week?
I've been riding that old faithful Zero Motorcyclist DSRX. Yeah, I love that thing. The more I ride it, the more I like it. I actually went off-roading on it the other day, and gosh, like it's a really nice electric motorcycle. Probably the best one out there, I'd have to say. So, yeah, it just does everything. Super fun. Really like that bike.
That's a pretty solid, we'll say, accommodation or reflection of how good that bike is. If Adam has many, many motorcycles available at his disposal and he keeps riding the Zero. So when a moto head like Adam chooses to ride a Zero around a lot, that says something.
Yeah, that's like three weeks in a row, I think now.
Yeah, every time I ride it, I just really enjoy it. Like, it's just like, it's such a nice electric motorcycle, especially with the other entries coming out in the class and the segment. It just proves to you how good this Zero is, you know?
Right on. Okay. Well, I think it's cool. I mean, I've ridden a couple Zeros and I've always liked them. So what about Jeff? What have you been riding?
I'm back on the Yamaha Tracer 9 GT Plus. I love that thing. I mean, it's a great sport touring bike, but it's just a great bike. It's good for touring, and I've spent time like long days in the saddle, and for that stuff, it feels kind of bigger than it is. Like in the way of like comfort and being able to spend all those hours on it, but also just around town, it feels very small and nimble. So it's a really great combination of features.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a killer engine.
Yeah.
And then it's sporty, but it's upright. It's comfortable. It's got bags. You can carry crap around with you. Like, what's not to like, man?
What's not to like? Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't ridden the current GT Plus, but I did do a ride. That was probably 5-6 years ago now, for the press launch of the Tracer 9. And I rode one all the way back from somewhere in Washington, all the way back to the office in a couple of days.
Washington State?
Yeah, Washington State, not DC.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a whole lot of scenic motorcycling around Washington, DC. But it was rad. It was a super comfortable bike then, and they just made it better and better as years went on. So pretty rad. Myself, I didn't get to ride anything this week. I was riding a Boeing 737-800 multiple times. I went to AIM Expo, American International Motorcycle Exposition, which is an industry trade show with manufacturers, aftermarket companies, and everyone gets there, networks, dealers come, they talk to people, and it was good. It was a very busy show. The floor was completely packed with people and displays. So, they said that attendance was up 37% this year. So that is a good sign for motorcycling, I think. So, because if you're not selling stuff and you're struggling as a business, you're not going. So if you're going, that means things are going well. So that's really cool to see. So maybe it's not all doom and gloom on the horizon for the motorcycle industry, as sometimes we fear. So,
well, it's good news. That's good news to hear.
It is good news. Attended. And what is better news for motorcycling is getting more people involved with riding. How about that segue?
Nice.
So let's talk about, like, if you're brand new, if you're just beginning your journey into motorcycling, like you've never ridden a motorcycle before, you don't know what to ride, you don't know what to do, like how do you get started? Like there's a lot of ways people get into motorcycling, so we should talk about that first. So, like, how do you guys see people historically getting into riding?
Well, I mean, just camping, going to the desert, going in the woods, going to the lake house, camping.
So hanging out with somebody that has a bike and you're at a location, like, let me try that thing, sort of thing?
I think so. Just kind of goes through like families and family friends and, just getting out and just going to do something on the weekend. That's kind of where I think it begins for a lot of people, at least in the old days, maybe in the new days, it shifted a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a few ways that people get into it. Like, one, a lot of us as kids, not myself, but a lot of my friends learned by hopping on somebody else's bike, usually when we were kids, right? Like somebody gets a dirt bike, everyone goes over to their house after school and it's like, let me try that thing. And then it usually ends in someone wiping out on their friend's dirt bike.
Yeah, it ends in tears. Yeah.
It usually ends in tears and road rash and maybe some damaged property. So
a bike going through the garage door.
Yeah. It's probably not the best way to get into it, but that is the reality for a lot of riders. Is they learn from a friend. They just hop on a friend's bike and they give it a go. And some people are hooked, but I think there's also a lot of people that try it, they whiskey throttle through a fence, and that's the end of it. They're like, nope, no motorcycles for me, right?
Those are my beginnings for sure.
Yeah. So the other way is, family. Some of us were lucky to get motorcycles as kids, as Christmas presents or birthday presents or, whatever it may be. Like, we had families that rode and we got into it. So that's my case, which we'll go on a little bit later. But there's lots of people out there that just don't know where to start. So I think the top spot, best way to do it, one of the best ways to do it, is get in touch with the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. It is a nonprofit organization that promotes safety for motorcyclists with programs on rider training, operator licensing, and public information. This is the way that you can try out a motorcycle the first time. Don't even own a motorcycle, but they will provide you a motorcycle to ride. And if you choose to do all the training, you can actually get most of your motorcycle licensing requirements done in their classes, right? So, and we have a good buddy that's running that program now, Corey Eastman, who is madly passionate about getting the word out about the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, and we're all about it because it's definitely has a large curriculum to teach you how to ride a bike from very beginning to actually having some advanced schools to learn advanced skills. So, have
either of you guys ever done the MSF school?
Personally, I have not.
No, it wasn't around for me.
Yeah, it was not around during my time, but I do have a neighbor that did it. My neighbor Ted, he is a theoretical astrophysicist, retired, and he is a fairly adventurous guy, but he rode a motorcycle like one time and had the whiskey throttle situation happen in his 20s, and now he's 65 or something like that, early 60s, and his his wife was always like, no motorcycle for you, like no. And then they met me, and just through osmosis, not saying, Ted, you got to get a bike, you got to try it. He's decided he wanted to start riding motorcycles. So he signed up for an MSF course. He did the basic rider training, which is like a 15-hour class as classroom and practical training, like on a bike, and so I think he was on I believe he was on a CRF 250, if I remember right, like a 250L, and he did the whole thing, and he got his license, and he went out and he bought a CRF 300L Rally. Like nice. That is a total success story for MSF. Like,
that's cool.
So is the wife still talking to you?
Yeah. No, she's very happy that he's doing it the right way. I took him out on some little dirt bikes here and there in between all this to just help him with some skills, but he's progressing, and he's starting to do longer rides, and he's working up to it, and his goal is to do some bike camping. So super rad. So there's all kinds of other stuff for MSF. There's e-course, which is like a primer for doing the basic course. So it basically teaches you all the things about motorcycling online. It's like $20 for the course. And then that goes towards, your other types of things. And then they have, MSS has ride days around some rallies and festivals and events where it's a 30-minute primer, and you can do it totally free. They will put you on a motorcycle, put a helmet on you, put gear on you, and let you ride a bike and see if you like it for 30 minutes for free, which, I mean, for me, that would go by in a flash, I think, 30 minutes on a bike. But it's enough to get some people hooked, I'm sure. And then you can go through the basic rider course, what we talked about. Most states waive the riding test portion, and all you need to show up with is gear. So you do have to lay out for some gear once you sign up for that. So, and then they go further and further into, like we said, dirt bike classes, ADV classes, advanced skills. And then, Harley Davidson dealerships, a lot of them have training classes as well. And they're based mainly on the MSF curriculum, but not all of them. And then you've got Can-Am. They also have their own training classes on the three-wheeler, which can get you your motorcycle license. They have a motorcycle license portion and then a non-motorcycle license portion, depending on what state, and all these things, they cost about $100 to like $400. So, I mean, like, is spending $100 to $400 worth it to even find out if you like riding before you outlay all the dough? Yeah, no.
Depends
how
much in your checking account, I guess,
Sure.
But I would think it would be worth it. Yeah, I mean, give a couple $100 to give something a shot, see if you like it, test the waters without really having to test the waters. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think some places also have loaner gear. I believe I've seen that they have gear you can choose from.
Yeah, at the Honda Rider Education Center in Colton, my wife took a class there, and they give you all the gear and everything as well. And that one's a really cool place that has street training and off-road training. And it's run by Mercedes Gonzalez, who, was the first one of the first female professional motocross riders. Like, she's been around it a long time. Such a cool
story.
And she is full tilt, about teaching people to ride motorcycles and getting them excited about it and showing them the right way to ride, and doing it in a safe, controlled space. So,
yeah, you mentioned the Harley Davidson. Do you remember a few years ago, Harley Davidson had the initiative to teach an entire town in North Dakota to ride, like the entire town from ages from 16 to 75.
No way.
Yeah. It's called, I think Rider, and it's called Rider North Dakota. And they taught the entire town to ride motorcycles.
That's insane.
Never
Isn't
heard
that awesome?
One.
Yeah.
That is really rad. That's a nice PR thing, but also, wow. That's cool that every person in that town, if or almost every person in that town had the experience of trying a motorcycle.
Yeah, and it brings the town together, like the community,
Absolutely.
like everybody, everybody gets to know each other and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We know that motorcycling is it can be a mode of transportation, it can be a pastime, but it's also very much a lifestyle and a connector of people, right?
Yeah.
We can go anywhere in the world, and if there's somebody on a motorcycle, we could rock up to them and say, "Hey, what's up? What's that? What are you riding? Oh, I ride this." And the conversation takes off. It's hardly ever, someone would rebuff you for coming over and saying hi if you're a motorcyclist.
Yeah. Yeah, that shows in the way we all sort of give each other the wave on the road and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that varies.
People love doing the wave.
Yeah.
Wave, man. Yep. It's good to see the wave is becoming normalized between different types of riders too, right? It used to be like, like cruiser guys wouldn't wave at sport bike guys or vice versa, and now it seems a little more inclusive, which is nice.
Yeah, it's funny because back in those days where you didn't wave at everybody. Sometimes it'd be like a guy in like an American V twin, and you might be on a metric cruiser, and they'd wave and then realize like, oh, I didn't mean to wave to that guy. But those days are over. I think everybody waves.
Yep. Mr. Allen, do you still not wave to the autocycle 3-wheel crew?
I plead the fifth.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. It's interesting, And people used to not wave at scooters either. I even wave at scooters. I want everyone to feel awesome. I wave at all the kids on electric bikes too. If I'm on a bike, like I'll egg them on to do a wheelie, or I'll do a wheelie for them. Like that's I just love everyone getting stoked on riding on two wheels.
Yeah, I wave at the scooter guys because I love scooters. Like especially like the faster ones. Yeah, like the Piaggio, the Vespa 300s are just so much fun.
Oh, dude, they're rad. We went to Rome one time for a Vespa launch. And I mean, Rome is just filled with scooters. And so we went and did the whole day ride cruise. And then we were heading back for dinner. And it turned into like a little bit of a race through traffic. Like everyone was trying to get ahead. And dude, we thought we were just burning up the road. Like it felt like I was racing a GNCC. And I was going through the traffic. And the next lane over, a lady passed me on like a larger wheel Piaggio scooter in a skirt, smoking a cigarette, and had her cell phone out and passed me like I was standing still.
Nice.
So I was like, I am definitely not a resident of Rome. When in Rome did not apply to me because I could not hang with the Romans. So.
Yeah, I usually, this, when I go on vacation, I'll usually not get a rental car. I find someone and I'll rent a scooter. I've done it all around the world. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm into them. So what about other ways? Like a lot of people learn in the dirt, right? And personally, I think that is a great way to start your journey and to learn, because one, there's less stuff to hit in terms of like curbs, cars, people. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, you also have an opportunity to learn a lot earlier in life. You can't. It's hard to put a kid on anything on the pavement, unless they go to like an MSF or something like that, and then you'd still have to bring your own bike. But obviously off road, there's so much to learn. It's a little bit more of a controlled environment.
Yeah, in a way, it's more fun and more safe too at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to Adam's point, you're already out camping or you're hanging out with friends, and
yeah, exactly. I think there's also another element that dirt surface is not as consistent as pavement, so it gets you comfortable with like situations that may feel a little bit hairy or a little bit loose or a little bit, you know what I mean? Like you learn to be okay with the bike moving around a little bit, and you learn to be okay with quick little surprises that may pop up. So I think that's a really nice part about learning on a dirt bike as well. So let's go through like how we all learn to ride. Like I want to know the origin stories of the crew. So Jeff, let's start with you.
Okay, well, my stories are pretty funny. They're very similar to like the scene in On Any Sunday, you know, where the neighbor jumps on somebody's bike and then rifles through, or just runs through the yard and across the street. So I'll tell you, the very first time was just for a minute. I was with my dad at Saddleback Motocross Park, and I don't even remember whose bike it was or if we knew them. But my dad, he's like, "Here, just try this thing out." And I got on it. I didn't have any trouble with the clutch. I just got on it, gave it gas, and just hauled ass across the parking lot, careened off like one of those metal trash cans into the side of a pickup truck. My dad's like, "That's enough for today." So, but then like to really learn, I was like 12 years old. I went with my dad and a dad down the street and his son, which was one of my best friends, Todd Townley. We went to a riding area that Dawes would probably remember, out in Corona, where people used to ride by the dam. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my dad was not really the best instructor. Todd had a CR80. He had like I don't know, maybe like a 73 or something like that, CR80. And my dad said, "Tom and I are going to go riding. Have Todd show you what to do." Todd's also 12. So I jump on the back of the CR80 with Todd. We ride over to this area where there's like a little track, and Todd's, you know, keeping the two-stroke running. He's like blipping, blip, 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 while he's explaining to me how to ride. I'm like, okay. He goes, you know, one down, the rest up. And at the time, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, so anyways, I get, and so the rest of what are up. So I jump on the thing, and he says, "Go." And so I let the clutch out, I hit the gas, and I'm flying down, like, it's like a little track, and I'm not flying, I'm in first gear. But I can't remember what he said. So I can't find second gear because I'm just stepping on first again. And so while I'm looking down, I don't realize I go off the trail a little bit and I catch the barbed wire fence with my arm. And it yanks me off, and I kind of like spin into the barbed wire, and like, yeah, it just shredded me. I was just completely and shredded the seat on Todd's CR80, which his dad was very pissed about. But so I stand up, and I have holes all over me. I didn't have any like big cuts, but I had just like dozens of little teeny holes all over me, and holes in my shirt that started bleeding. I looked like I'd been shot with a shotgun. And so the funny thing was, that morning before we left, I was a skate kid and a BMX kid. I was always banged up. That morning, my dad took stitches out of my foot so we could go riding. So when we were done that day, back to the emergency room for more stitches, like 1 week later.
Nice. That's awesome. So then how did you keep going after that? Like what caught the spark? I mean, you got mangled by a barbed wire fence, got more stitches, and you still said, "Yeah, this is."
Yeah. So a couple years later, I bought my first bike. I bought it from Todd's dad, the same Todd I was riding with.
I bought it.
No, I bought it. His dad was selling a Yamaha DT 175, you know, with the dual sport lights and stuff on it. And I was I think I was about 15, and I just went off on my own and just rode. We grew up in an area that's all houses now, but there was a lot of like open space, you know, and I would just do like cattle trails and stuff like that. Just ride almost every day after school.
Crazy. That's cool. Adam, what about you? How many fences did you break through?
I don't think we actually did any fence breaking. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and if you're familiar with that part of the region, a lot of people have cabins and lake homes. So in the summertime, when the weather's nice, you go to your cabin or lake home. So one of my good childhood friends, his uncle had a cabin, or he had a cabin in Lake Home, and next door was his uncle. And in his uncle's garage, he had a bunch of like just old motorcycles, like CT70 and like little quads, just a bunch of just kind of small, a little bit rinky dink stuff. But we'd go there, when he wasn't around, we'd kind of go in the garage, grab the motorcycles and just start riding around. We'd ride around through the forests and just around the roads. And back in those days, you didn't have, you probably had helmets, but you didn't wear them. So you didn't wear helmets, you didn't wear anything. You just hopped on your CT70 and went. And, my buddies basically taught me how to ride those things. And like Jeff said, the clutch, it wasn't that hard to really, if I remember correctly, it wasn't that hard to really understand how to work that clutch. And those machines were just so easy and friendly to ride. It was just really easy to kind of learn how to ride a motorcycle.
Right on. Nice. My story. So my dad, who's actually technically my stepdad, but he's my dad. My mom started dating him, and this dude was cool. Like, he had the jet skis, the motorcycles, the street bikes, like a lowered truck, a lifted truck. Like, he had all the stuff, right? And I was like, this dude is the coolest. And I was 8 years old, and my mom and dad weren't even married yet. And Christmas Eve, he showed us On Any Sunday. The movie On Any Sunday. So we watched On Any Sunday. We're like, that was cool, and whatever. And, I guess I could have got the hint, but I didn't. And in the morning, there was dirt bikes for me and my little brother underneath the tree or outside. I can't exactly remember if they were in the front room or not, but I think they were in the backyard. But I had an XR75, and my brother got a RM50 RM50. Like a little Suzuki RM50. And we went out riding on the dry lake bed outside of our little town, Boulder City, Nevada. There's tons of room to learn, which was a good thing. And Christmas morning, man, it was like open all these presents that have like a Honda jersey and a helmet and a this and a that, and then the bikes. And we loaded up one of the trucks with the bikes and headed to the dry lake bed and learned to ride down there, which was the only thing I really remember about it is even the 50 my brother had to be shifted, and him going around in circles in first gear and my dad chasing after him yelling, shift, shift, I think he nuked that bike a couple of times, just over revving it and melting it down because he would never shift. But yeah, that was my first time, and I was hooked immediately. That's all I wanted to do, was ride a motorcycle once that first time came. And that day, I think I crashed like 4 or 5 times, kind of like Jeff's story, but more like, I was like a BMX kid too. I would try jumping off of like little mud humps and stuff, and I would just completely wipe out. And, I think it was like probably my second dirt bike ride, I went to the hospital. I think the first one I didn't, but that second time we went out, I think I was definitely visiting the hospital on that one. So, and then that trend just continued my entire life of going to the hospital.
Well, that sounds like the best Christmas ever.
It was awesome
dirt bikes and dirt bike gear, both.
Yeah, all of it. And
it's interesting. Sorry,
it's funny that like your dad, my dad, Adam's friend, gave us something that we've carried with us our entire life, like it's set our careers, just not our lives, but our careers from, something that was just supposed to be fun.
Yeah. I think of them, honestly, I think of them as like magic carpets, because they take you to all these, like you get on a motorcycle and it really takes you to all these magical places. I mean, we've all done lots of really cool stuff, from the seat of a motorcycle. Yep.
Pretty much.
Magic carpet ride.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is the mover of the masses. Like there's lots of countries where it's not a pastime. It's the only way that you can have transportation. And that's a totally different experience than here in the US, And so I should say, like, we're talking about getting into riding in the US and how to do it, because it is a pastime, and it's something that not everyone does, and it's not the norm. So, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to back up just for a second, because you mentioned On Any Sunday. Mm-hmm. I mentioned On Any Sunday. my kids, Evan, who's here on staff, he watched On Any Sunday on a loop, like just repeatedly. So we need to give a shout out to Bruce Brown for getting all of these people into learning motorcycles.
Yeah, Bruce Brown. Definitely
nobody had a bigger effect than that.
No, definitely not. And then all the heroes in, obviously, On Any Sunday, of course, starting with Malcolm Smith, R.I.P. But I mean, there was a load of awesome people in that movie, and he really did show the joy of riding and what it felt like to be a rider, even if you weren't. And that's what got a lot of people pumped on it.
Yeah, the competition and also the folly,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just the fun,
all of it.
Cow trailing and all that stuff that they did was just rad. So
yeah, and we've all grown up with knowing somebody like Malcolm who could do it all and do it well, and just amaze the rest of us.
Yep. So I think that's On Any Sunday should be added to the prerequisite of like how to get into riding. If you want to learn how to ride, just go rent.
Watch this
On
first.
Any Sunday. Watch On Any Sunday first, and you'll definitely want to do it. So, I want to talk about. Okay, so those are the ways to get into it. But what are some of the barriers to be getting into it? And I think one of them is actually us, other riders, experienced riders, tend to be like gatekeepers, or we forget how hard it was, and we may belittle people that are getting into it that maybe aren't up to snuff. You know what I mean? Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, like what do you mean? Like
you'll see people on the internet and someone will be like learning to ride and someone will be like, oh, look at that dumb helmet, or why are your knee pads on the outside of your pants, or that bike's a piece of crap, why would you buy that, you're stupid, like you should just give up riding, like that kind of stuff. And and just in general, like belittling people for their choices in maybe the way that they start their motorcycling journey. Lots of people, oh, electric bike or an automatic bike, if you can't use a clutch, you shouldn't be riding, type of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
welcome to the internet.
Yeah, welcome to the internet. But I mean, let's put it this way: if you're just a normal guy walking into a motorcycle shop for the first time and you don't know what you're doing, that's pretty intimidating. But what happens if you're female or gay or any other person? Like, it's got to be terrifying, because it's all usually full of just bro dudes that don't speak your language, don't live the life you live. And how do you get into it? Like, that to me is one of the barriers too, is that it's scary to go into a motorcycle shop if you feel like you're going to be belittled. And motorcyclists in general are amazing, great people, but we forget how hard it is and how scary it is to start this thing up.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And so I think every motorcyclist should be an ambassador for motorcycling, and a lot of us are, but if someone shows interest, help them increase that interest. If someone is struggling with riding, figure out a way to help them. And even if someone wants to ride something different or in a different way, we should support those people, because we're all part of a group of motorcyclists, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I always try to be encouraging, and I've all my kids either currently ride or have ridden. I have 3 kids, and a handful of their friends have come to me, and because they see that we ride, and their dad or whoever doesn't ride, and I try to be encouraging and help them make good decisions on what to buy, and both that it's easy to ride, it's easy to maintain, reliable, cheap. That's another barrier, is the cost. Make sure you can get something.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And so I'll say to everyone that's interested in learning riding, don't be afraid of motorcycles. Like our saying just now of like, don't be a gatekeeper and all that stuff. That's just aimed at the real a-holes of the group. We're all usually pretty good people. And once you're in the club, you're in the club, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, supporting people getting involved in motorcycling is supporting motorcycling.
yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So, okay. So we've talked about how to get into it, right? We've talked about, basically like how to help someone get into it. Let's talk about, before we get into like maybe the next step once you started to ride, but like bikes to start on. So we did a podcast probably about 5 episodes ago about great beginner bikes. And I still think you just need to go back and watch that one because we have a lot of good points about electric bike or about beginner bikes and electric bikes. I think the electric bikes are in that discussion, but just one quick recommendation from each of you on a beginner bike. What should you get?
I would say a small displacement off-road bike, not a motocross bike, but like a CRF 125F. Just perfect. Usually, that's the seat height is probably accommodating for most people if you're at least a teenage person or older, and they're just, like I said, like keeping them running. They're easy to maintain. They hardly need maintenance, but I would say a Honda CRF 125.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. Just a small, almost like a play dirt bike. At first, I wanted to say like, oh, a Z400 or a Ninja 400, but then Jeff brought up that point. If you never were into it, getting started in the dirt, it's just a lower barrier of entry, safer. And then you ride that bike for whatever, a weekend, 2 weekends, a month, 3 months, whatever it takes for you to get comfortable. And then, if you find a decent deal on one, you're going to be able to sell that thing for exactly the amount of money you bought it for. And then you can roll that into your street bike, which would be a Z400 or a Ninja 400, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I think for people that maybe don't have access to space to go off-roading, maybe I would say still like a small displacement dual sport. So like a Honda XR 150L, like that thing is, super light, super nimble, easy to move around, doesn't have a ton of power, lower seat height. And it's a Honda, like Adam and Jeff said, like you can sell that thing for almost exactly as many pennies as you bought it for a year later.
Yeah, just about, yeah.
So I would say
they really hold their resale.
Yep, an XR 150L would be a great bike for basically anywhere, anybody, anywhere. If you are completely fresh and have never ridden before, and you're going to buy a motorcycle, that's definitely one worth looking at.
Yep.
So
that's a really good idea, and you can ride that thing on the street, because it's street legal too.
Yeah,
so
when you get comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
what about once you get up to speed? What do you guys think about riding schools or continuing, your motorcycling education?
Yeah, I think we would all agree. Like Dawes said, we probably have close to 100 years of riding experience, but we still continue our education. I mean, maybe not at a school, but we're constantly learning. It's a ongoing process.
Yeah, for sure. There's all kinds of riding schools that you can take advantage of as you get better. Obviously, you can go to track day schools, like Champ School or California Superbike School, where like you learn to control a motorcycle at a high speed. And you may never have designs on wanting to go racing or do track days, but I tell you what, you will learn a ton going to one of those things, because you will learn to control your motorcycle a lot better when there's higher forces than normal on your bike.
Yeah, you understand what it's doing.
And those schools are also a great opportunity to try a different type of motorcycle too. Maybe you're a little bit more into dirt biking and you want to kind of give street biking a shot, but you don't really feel comfortable doing it on actual public roadway. You can do the
Yep.
Yamaha Champion School or the California Superbike School and get on a closed course, and kind of get up to speed. The new modern motorcycles with their adjustable power modes, those things go from mild to wild with the push of a button. So even if you're new, you can ride a bike that's very high performance that's been put in easy mode.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Is one, like you said, you get to try different bikes because both those schools, they provide the motorcycles. Like you're learning on their bike because they want you to have a consistent playing field to teach everyone fun. So that's super rad. And then you get to, do something different. There's a bunch of different street riding schools around the country as well. There's one that comes to mind is the a lot of states you can actually go do the police riding school, right? So they teach you it's more slow speed handling and in and out of stuff, and but you get a lot of skills. They teach you a lot of stuff about clutch control and braking and looking where to go and all those things, right?
That's news to me. Like the police, like those cone courses. I had no idea that was open to the public.
Yes, some of the states actually you can go take the police officer riding school. I mean, it varies state by state, but if you should check it out. Like if you're learning to ride and you're getting better and you want to take the next step, that's an excellent way to do the next step.
Yeah, I have seen those trainings. They have a competition here in Southern California, the Motor Cop Olympics or something.
Yeah,
and it's impressive. Those guys are really great riders.
They're amazing around all the cone courses where they're just like laying the bike like completely full lock on the floorboard, turn
gear, dragging a pen.
Wow, that's pretty rad. So, and then there's probably the most popular of all riding schools is ADV schools, right?
Certainly right now they're pretty popular.
And there's all kinds of different schools to go to. Like you could go for a week to some places, or you can do a 1-day school or a 2-day school or whatever. So we were just at the facility for our buddy Jeff, Andre LaPlante. His school, Moto Ventures. He does.
Yeah, he's got an incredible setup there, from the teaching and his property, and he's got everything there.
Yeah, and I mean he's the second generation teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and it's he does dirt bike stuff, he does ADV stuff, he can even do trial stuff, so you can learn a lot there. And then some manufacturers, they have their own riding schools. Triumph has I think it's called the Triumph Riding Experience, and they have schools all over the world. Like I went to the one in Wales just to see the facility. I didn't take the classes or anything. We were there for riding a Scrambler 1200 XE for a thing, and but I got to see the facilities. Super rad. Like they have like a beautiful classroom. They have locker room, showers, place for lunch, and then they have an amazing facility to do all the things.
Is that facility an on-road and off-road facility?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And there's one in Spain. There's one in the U.S. There's one. I'm trying to think where else. They're all over the world. So I think there's one like in not Thailand, but somewhere in Asia. So you can find one. And hey, go do a rider school in Spain or something, and have a vacation and learn to ride a motorcycle better. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, sign me up.
Yep. And then BMW obviously has their schools as well, and they're worldwide. They usually partner with somebody to teach it, but they are all BMW approved riding schools. And same thing, you show up, you use their bikes. Super rad. You can ride usually a GS, so it could be a 900, it could be an 800, it could be a 1300 at this point. It's just what you want to learn to ride, what you want to improve your skills on. So and then there's I think it's important to talk about female specific training. There are coaches out there that absolutely cater to females, and then there's at places. So there's a company called She ADV. They do ADV training and rides, and it's female trainers, female customers, and I think that's super rad to be able to get people, riders to be comfortable with what they're learning. They don't, they all come from the same angle. So, and there's Babes Ride Out, which is a street event, and Babes in the Dirt, which is a dirt event. And at both of those rally type events, they have training as well. So you could go to I think you could go to Babes Ride Out or Babes in the Dirt and not ride, and by the time you left there, you would learn how to ride.
Yeah, both of those events were really popular with some of the women that worked here in the office in the sales and marketing teams, and they would always go to those, and they would take those extra courses. It was super popular.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool weekend out. It's a full weekend riding festival that super rad. Everyone that I've talked to that has gone to one is nothing but awesome things to say about it. So. Anyway, okay, so there we've got how to get started, what to get started on, where to get better. So let's talk about always learning, and then our own training tips. So let's start with training tips first. So let's each give like one thing that you would give a new rider as a tip that they should always have in their head. Adam, we'll go with you first.
I think the biggest safety tip, not the biggest, but one that I really, think is important and something I try to practice most every day is just, practicing spatial awareness, your position relative to the position of other things, especially in today's world. I see it quite often, even when I go to the store, when I'm not on my motorcycle, is people don't really have really good spatial awareness techniques of where their body's positioned relative to other people or objects. And, it really matters on a motorcycle because, you always want to have a little bit of a cushion. You always want to have a little bit of a way out in case something in front of you happens, which quite often it does. So really just being aware of your position in relative to other objects, I think is really important. And it's a skill that you don't need to be on a motorcycle to practice. You can do it when you're shopping at the grocery store.
Yeah. Know what's behind you, know what's next to you, stay out of blind spots. Know where the
spaces are.
Yeah,
you
need to are. Like
have an exit plan,
you always
leave.
Have kind of an exit plan. And I think that comes second nature, obviously, as you become a rider and you ride more and more, that becomes normal. But that's an excellent tip, because you do see a lot where you'll see you'll be on the freeway and you'll see a bike right in a blind spot, and you're like, oh, don't be there, please. Move up, slow down, one of the two. Come on,
And to your point, Justin, motorcycling and riding power sports vehicles really fosters that type of mentality, because you'll learn quickly that not that the world's out to get you, but when you're riding these bikes, it's very easy to have some kind of mishap. But if you're paying attention and you're making sure you're looking far ahead of you and just know where you're at relative to other things, you're going to have a lot easier and more safe time.
Yeah. The preservation.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice, Wahid.
Yeah. Self-preservation. The word is there, self. It's up to you to do it, not anybody else. So, cool. Jeff, what about you? What do you got for a riding tip or training tip?
Well, most of my experience teaching new riders is teaching my kids. I taught 3 of my kids to ride, even their mom. And so I would sort of drive home this one idea, the 3 ups, because they were learning in the dirt. I was always tell them to move up, scoot up on the tank, put weight on the front wheel, stand up, and that helps learn how to weight the pegs, stand up, and head up. Look up. Don't look down at the ground. So I would, like give them the 3 ups.
Mm-hmm.
Scoot up, stand up, head up.
I think the 3 ups still apply to me to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a riding tip and a training tip. But the riding tip, it was almost exactly what Jeff said with the head up is you want to look where you want to go, not where you don't. Target fixation is real in motorcycling. It's a very difficult habit to break because our, just human nature and the way that our brains have evolved, we want to identify the danger and we want to keep an eye on the danger. But when you're riding, the motorcycle follows your body and your body follows your head and it follows your eyesight. So if you look at that thing you don't want to hit, you're 100% going to hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, that's the way it is. So, it's always, scanning for danger, of course, but when you identify it, don't fixate on it. Yeah. Look for the way around it and concentrate on that rather than that thing is danger. So, and then for, like training itself, barrel training or cone training, like small space, set up cones and go around in circles and figure eights and brake and accelerate. All that repetition going around and around and around in a small space has a big impact on your skills because you want to teach muscle memory. You want to teach making those moves automatic, pulling in the clutch, pressing the brake, downshifting, rolling off the throttle, rolling on the throttle. And if you do that over and over and over and over and over again in a small space, you're going to learn it faster.
Yeah. And you're learning what the tires are doing. You're learning, how to modulate the brake and by repeating that process. That's great advice.
Yeah. Leaning the bike over, right? You understand what happens when you lean a bike over a little bit and a lot and all those things.
And the speeds are lower, consequences lower.
Yeah, exactly. Slow speeds, small consequences. So, yeah. So, we're always learning how to ride. Like, I'm 48. Jeff, I don't know if you want to, Jeff Burgundy.
I'm older than 48, we'll just say.
Jeff Burgundy has passed 48. And Adam, you're like 44.
45. 46. Okay. Yeah, I'm reaching Jeff's age soon.
Yeah, we're all old dudes. We ain't boomers. Well, Jeff might be a boomer. Are you a boomer, Jeff?
No. Nope.
Okay. So,
no, not claiming.
Let's see your ID. See your ID.
Okay, boomer. So, we've been around it a long, long, long time. But I still learn things, and I'm sure you guys do as well. So, I want to know like something that maybe you've learned lately, because I really want to impress upon this that riding is a constant learning journey. It never is the same, and you're always finding new things. So, Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, about 10 years ago, I had my first track day, and which was new for me. I mostly rode off-road and touring, doing long trips, vacation trips. And so I started doing track days, and that was a whole new thing for me. And even though I had been riding at that point, for a long time, many decades,
still trying to avoid that age.
Getting on the racetrack was intimidating because you get on, the speeds are up and the references are different. On the road, it's a little different. Like there's, you're looking for curbs and trees and mailboxes and stuff like that. When I got to the racetrack, there's a big flat open space, and I was a little bit lost for a while, and I didn't know what I was doing. In fact, one time I was riding with Bradley Adams. This was the first time I met Bradley. I didn't realize how fast Bradley was, and I was going around the track, totally lost, and Bradley comes by me, and I thought, well, I'll just follow this guy. So I get on and I jump in behind him, and he's going pretty good. And he gets to the turn, he just flicks it in, and it just disappears. And I am like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe it. So that was the thing. It's like, okay, you got to figure this out. So cornering, cornering the main thing, obviously, learning your braking points was a first learning lesson, and just being smooth and consistent. You can be kind of sloppy off road, but you can't at the racetrack.
Yeah. So that goes into my learning. So I have been riding dirt bikes since I was 8 years old. So 40 years of dirt bike riding. To the point where I was, a pro level off-road racer at one point. And I'm still learning things about riding off-road. And I do a lot of like hard enduro type riding now. And I didn't realize that how important keeping your feet on the foot pegs to keep moving forward was. Like, you always want to be standing, you always want to have your feet on the foot pegs whenever you can, and that was always like a rule. But there's times when you get into some really hard stuff and you start paddling your feet and you're like, I'm not going anywhere, and I've on this like little tiny bump I can't get up it because it's all muddy and slippery. And I was perusing YouTube, and then there's a guy that has a pretty rad hard enduro YouTube channel called the IRC Moto Tire Guy, and he does hard enduro training, and I started watching these videos about getting your weight forward, getting at least 1 foot on the foot peg to help you move forward when you're stuck, and really think about what you're doing. And I started applying that in the last couple of weeks, and it's really changed the difficulty for hard enduro for me. I could get over stuff, but it was always with kind of like brute force and no sort of skill involved. It was more like willpower, and now there's a little more skill to it. So like I said, 40 years of riding, and I learned something new 2 weeks ago.
And we also still are learning like the basics, like those early things, like what you said. I can't tell you how many times I've been, racing down a sand wash, and there's a rock in the sand wash, and I hit it. I'm like, don't look at the rock. Like, don't look at it. If you won't hit it, if you got to remind yourself, don't do that. Yeah,
you always have to kind of go back to your training and think about it. Sometimes, even when it becomes what you think is automatic, it's not always that way. What about you, Adam?
I mean, honestly, I'm pretty much agreeing with both you guys. It's not so much that I'm maybe learning new techniques, but I always have to work on practicing the techniques that I should be practicing, like the 3 ups. I mean, we were somewhere the other day where Jeff literally said, scoot forward. And I'm like, you idiot, and just simple stuff like that, keeping your elbows up, not staring at the rock you want to hit. I do that all the time. So, just honestly, just practicing just the fundamentals, and always kind of talking yourself through that, trying to stand up all the time, keep your toes a little bit in. Just as you get older, it's easier to kind of let some of these practices fade out of your memory. So you really have to just, pay attention and be, just be aware of these techniques, because these things will make riding more fun and safer.
Absolutely. So, that's
and if you're not familiar with these techniques, go to a riding school, go to seek out professional coaching, seek out a mentor who has these skills, and try to learn these skills. A lot of these skills in motorcycling, it's almost a little bit like voodoo magic. Like, people don't really talk about these skills. Like, there's information on YouTube, but the person on YouTube may not be the person who really knows the subject matter. So,
that's very true.
Buyer beware, but seek out professional coaching. That's always going to be your best bet.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, have either of you gone to a professional coach, for an advanced level, or had a mentor?
A long time ago, I went to Danny Hamill's riding school, which he was also a family friend. So it was, but we did a lot of barrel racing to start off with. Like, this guy was the fastest guy in the desert, natural talent, unbelievable. And he started with the basics, just like everyone else. And it was go around these cones. And, all these guys are expert level dirt bike riders. And I'm like, why are we doing these things? Like, I'll show you why. And you start to find flaws in your technique really fast when you concentrate it down to the simplest form. So I've done that one. I think that's probably it. I know I recommend Jimmy Lewis's off-road riding school a lot to people.
Yeah, I've had a lot of training from Jimmy, whether I ask for it or not.
Very true. Jimmy is actually a great teacher, and he's also a very hardcore dude. So you put those two things together, and you get a tough but firm teacher, right?
Yeah. Well, he's softened over the years. When I was one of his very first students before he had his training school, we were just co-workers, and I would have to go with him on photo shoots, and his advice was usually I didn't ask for it, first of all, but it was great advice, and in a lot of the things I learned from him, I still repeat to myself and practice them.
Yeah, he has a lot of good teachings, and I think I always go back to this one thing that I was at an ADV rally, and he was doing a class, and I just happened to be standing by listening, and he's got a mic on, and he's talking to everyone, and somebody asked him about, I can't touch the ground. How do I control a bike if I can't touch the ground? And he said, do you ride with your feet on the ground or on the foot pegs? And that really struck me as like, duh. Like, no, duh. Yeah, you ride with your feet on the foot pegs. Like, that's how you control a motorcycle. Not like you shouldn't be worried as much about getting your feet on the ground as keeping them up. And then he went through the whole process of why and how, and here's how you combat if you've got shorter legs, how to get on and off a bike, and how to touch the ground, and those things. But it started with like the duh thing that no one thinks of is, oh yeah, you do ride with your feet on the foot pegs, not on the ground.
Yeah.
So very solid teacher. We should have mentioned him earlier, but if you're like looking for a place to really hone your dirt skills, he's one of the best for off-road riding. So I think we got to wrap this thing up. I want to say one more thing is with training is ego. Don't let your ego get in the way of learning things. You may think you're a good rider, but there's always someone better and always somebody you can learn from, no matter what.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like the number 2 guy in Supercross can learn something from the number 1 guy in Supercross. There's always somebody better. So I want to say that learning to ride is one of the most fulfilling things that you will ever do in your life. It will become part of your the way you are if you let it, and you should let it. So don't be afraid to try it. There's easy ways to get into it. We will help you. Find someone that rides. They will probably help you. And then once you're doing it, continue to learn and help everybody else out. So that's it for this episode. We appreciate your support. Leave some comments down below. Tell us about your riding experience, your journey of becoming a rider. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode.